Hello again, social media world. This is Coach welcoming you to another episode of Essential Review, the podcast where we dive deeply into the movers and shakers of the comic book industry. Today, we're continuing our special guest series, spotlighting the creators who will be attending the City of Oaks Comic Book Odyssey, which will be happening in February 20th through the 22nd here in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. Our guest today is Lexx Truss, the founder of Truss Films Productions, a creative force bringing independent filmmaking, genre storytelling, and visual innovation to life. Through Truss Films, Lex champions bold stories that blend film, fandom, and culture, making a strong impact on the indie creative space. With a passion for collaborating and storytelling across mediums, we are excited to sit down with Lexx Truss as part of our COCO creative series. How are you doing today, Lex?
Doing great, Coach. How are you?
Doing fine, doing fine. Getting ready for this Coco, which
Yeah, yeah,
hopefully, this taking this time will allow you to kind of introduce yourself to the
absolutely.
attendees that we're going to have. So
Yeah.
let's start off with the early stages. Was there a specific project that made you realize that filmmaking was your path or attracted you to filmmaking?
Yeah. It started with Saturday morning cartoons, and then it eventually evolved into whereas like when I saw those, wanted to have my own cartoon one day, and then
Right.
eventually evolved into like wanting to make something live action. I think it was like seeing going out to the movies and seeing like films like The Matrix or like
Gotcha.
Spider-Man or like, ones that are just like it's kind of an immersive experience and
Right.
which kind of connects also to the comic book world and how comic books can be immersive and everything. And I think I wanted to be a part of that. So I think seeing like those type of projects, growing up with Star Wars, Matrix, and then anything, on TV that would play, I would just soak it. I would be a sponge and just soak up
Right.
anything, and that would help like kind of forge the voice that I end up, growing into, a little bit
Right.
later on.
Okay. All right. Well, when you started off, you weren't doing films. You
Mm,
actually, well, I guess it is a film. A documentary is a film, but you weren't doing as much creative storytelling.
yeah.
You were doing more documentaries. So tell me, how did you get into that?
Yeah, so I in high school I took TV production classes and I learned how to do news packages. And so like those news packages were kind of short form documentaries. And
Right.
so my intro to actually making projects was documentary filmmaking and then it kind of, came from there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Outstanding. Is there what was your first documentary?
Yeah. So one of my first ones was outside of doing the news packages was I got an opportunity to go to South Africa
Very
when I
nice.
was
Okay.
17 and
Okay.
which was like pivotal for just me as an individual, but also me as an artist because part of me like I guess getting accepted into this program was a program that was accepting like 10 high school students
Okay.
to go to South Africa in the Gifford County School District and um one of the things that stood out in my application and in my interviews was that I was a growing filmmaker and I wanted to make a project in South Africa that captured our 3 weeks. We're going to be there for 3 weeks and capture our three
Okay.
week journey there. So yeah, that was my first like big project where it was like my longest one, maybe even to date in the sense of like it was a 80 to 90-minute documentary that I was able to graduate high school with and enter college with and it helps up to set the tone, for projects
Right.
to come. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Okay. When now your background, you mentioned the early Saturday mornings.
Mhm.
Before, I've always heard you talk about CW
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What draws you to that genre of storytelling, whether it's sci-fi, action, comics,
Mhm.
or fan-based projects, fandom-based projects?
Yeah, I think from a kid to adult, I think it was like yeah, from the CW or the WB, seeing shows like um like Smallville or
Hmm.
trying to think what others. Well, we'll start with Smallville, like
Hmm.
seeing something like that, where it's like what was cool about Smallville was that was my interest that helped me was that it was once I realized what Smallville was, because for a while I didn't even know it was about Superman. And then
Right,
when I realized it was, I was like, oh, this is like Clark Kent growing up. It's like I
right,
think that's always been my interest. I think when it comes to I think filmmaking and storytelling is the human behind things and the
right,
character development.
right,
And with Smallville, it's a show that goes around what among 10 seasons to develop
right,
this guy from high school student to grown man to Superman,
right.
and then you see the character development, all the things that lead him up to that. So yeah, I think those things really took an interest of just like watching those watch whenever you get a chance to watch a character's arc. Where
Hmm.
in a show to get from one point to another, and you can see all the challenges and obstacles they go through, which is like we all go through in our own human stories in life. I think it's relatable and it's something I wanted to be a part of for sure. Yeah.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Now, you've done a lot of independent films to
Mhm.
this point, and
Mhm.
you've been to a lot of festivals and
Mhm.
won awards and been
Yeah.
recognized at those. Um, what are the biggest challenges as an independent filmmaker
Mm.
that you face, and how are you able to navigate those challenges?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think some of the biggest challenges are, I guess that word, that keyword independent,
Hmm.
is you don't really have like a big studio backing you. You have to it's not like you're working directly with Marvel or Disney or
Right,
Fox. You could get there, but as an independent, you kind of have to figure out what ways do you stand out, which it could be the fun thing about being independent. But that means, for me, I think like the biggest challenges or obstacles in that is finding that. Like you have to find your voice and finding your core audience and there's on like, I guess internet age,
right,
sometimes it's online or in the social media how you find it. But I think that's the beauty of it is being able to once you're able to make a project. And I think the obstacles that I was able to overcome was being able to get into programs where it's
right,
like I have an idea and it might be an independent idea, but if I submit it to a program that is looking for independent voices and growing voices, then it gives me a platform to not only be able to showcase the project, but some of these programs fund the projects themselves. And I've
right,
been in programs where, like, through a company like through Adobe, which is a known company that gave me $5,000 to make a grant. I mean, $5,000 grant to make a film, and then I worked with
right,
Red Bull that gave like 25 to 35 grand to make a
right,
project. So, you know, being independent is like also putting yourself out there and um going for opportunities and hoping
right,
that you can grow from one
right.
opportunity to the next. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I know that you've had um, the childhood being exposed to comic books and cartoons and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Being that you transitioned from North Carolina to California,
Yeah.
um, being in California, have you been exposed to any of the cartoons or
Mhm.
filmmaking that is going out there when it's
Mhm.
attached to superheroes or action like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have. I've been in LA, Los Angeles for about 8.5 years now. And in that journey, I've been blessed, and honored to have the opportunity to kind of be a part of a tribe of folks with different types of people
Right,
within the industry, and among that, within like my first couple of years, or even connecting with people who are also independent filmmakers that found their way into similarly of like how I found my way into programs with Dolby and Red Bull. I've
right.
known people who found their way into like the Nickelodeon, Writers Lab
Okay,
or the or and getting into from there they're learning how to write animation and then
okay,
I had a colleague who was in that program and then end up working on a show for Marvel that was around,
oh wow,
being centered around a young 13-year-old black girl in the Lower East Side of New York, and
Okay.
she's called Moon, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
so
Okay.
yeah, and so like being in that space, I'm able to see like just like they're able to see for me what my process is, able to see the process of what's it like to be in a program, go from being in a creative incubator program, a development program, and then find your way into a writer's room, like a
Right.
staff writer's room, which that show was a writer's room that lasted for, I think, a few years, to the same person is also writing for a Spider-Man show. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was originally called Spider-Man freshman year, but it may be
Oh,
called
okay.
something else. But I know it's through Marvel and it's an animated show. So being able to be in proximity to that is like
Right.
was good for me to see like, oh, there's different avenues when it comes to creating in the industry and how you can find yourself. You may not even think that like, oh, I'm gonna find myself in the comic book world. I may just write coming of age stories, but how like writing coming of age stories, like the colleague I know, it like allows you to kind of get into rooms where you can bring your coming of age sensibilities to the comic book space, which is really cool. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, now I know why you're set up at the COCO. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to be open to reviewing either stories or possible movie projects that people have ideas for, and open up
Mm-hmm.
to looking. The growing crossover
Mm-hmm.
between indie film creators and comic book conventions is actually
Yeah.
starting to be more recognized just because a storyteller is a storyteller. And
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
have you, what advice would you give inspiring filmmakers when they think of how those two work together,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's comic book writing or film writing?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying that it's like story, at the end of the day, whether it's comic book or for film or for a screenplay, it's all storytelling. And so I think that's the through line and that's the thing, that's the intersection that connects like everything together. So it's like if you can tell a story in a comic book from the beginning, middle, and end, that has conflict, that has like some form of shift in the story, a midpoint reversal that gets to the end. And if you understand how to tell a story or even how to consume a story as a reader of comic books, then you might be able to know like what it's like you might be able at least to have an entryway of writing a screenplay and then vice versa too as well. So I think, and I have, there's people I know in the industry that didn't start off as one thing, but then they become that thing. So it's like you may start off as a screenwriter, and then next thing you know, you might be writing plays, or you might be
Right.
writing
Yeah.
comic books. Or I know someone who uh or I know of someone who like writes for like Futurama and some of those adult animated shows, but also on the side writes for comic books as well. So I think
Okay.
like if you know how to craft a story and make a story from beginning, middle, and end, then you should be able to. It shouldn't be too hard to be able to shift from medium to medium, and I think that's what's
Right.
beautiful about COCO and the convention and being able to match or expose or connect the storytellers from different
Right.
mediums like myself and all the comic book writers or artists and even actors, too as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, quick question then,
Mm-hmm.
before we close. Who's your, if you did a film,
Mm-hmm.
what superhero would you base
Okay.
that film off of? If you could
Interesting.
choose any superhero.
Any superhero. Interesting. That's a good question. I don't know if I fully thought of it before. Well, have I? I think so. I know I used to say that if I did a Spider-Man movie, I would want to do
Mm,
a film called A Man Named Spider, where you like it's basically the concept is like, what if Peter Parker or Miles Morales was in an elevator and you just see who they are, and you see the man behind the
right.
costume. I think I do like those characters. I think I'm trying to think if there's another character that I would want to do something around, but I know that was a concept that I had at one point was like seeing another angle
Right.
of the comic book lens and the character.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time. Everyone, you'll be able to attend the COCO. You'll be able to sit down with Lex. Lex will be doing panels for us. Also, he'll be at his table where you'll be able to share some of your ideas and get some secrets on how to get into the industry. I want to say a huge thank you to Lex for joining us today and bringing a little taste of what you'll be having with you or bringing with you when you attend the COCO.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
want to make sure that everyone can come check him out at the COCO. Grab a photo with them and maybe get some ideas or maybe collaborate on some ideas. Thanks
Absolutely.
again for everyone for listening and supporting today's show and all of the shows tying into this series and the Essential Review as well. Until next time, stay creative, stay connected, keep being heroic, and as always, dare to dream.